All right, my friends. Good morning. For this Good Morning Linux, we'll get started here in just a moment. This is Total OS Today, Total Technology for beginners and beyond. I am your host, Carmine, or as the UPS driver once said, package for Carmini. That is a true story. My friends here on the channel call me TOS. TOS, that's short for Total OS, in case you didn't know. So for this Good Morning Linux, we'll talk about a little bit about the history of Ubuntu. And do you still Ubuntu? Do you still use Ubuntu? The next LTS for Ubuntu is scheduled to be released next month, a little bit over a month from this recording. And let's see. The original Ubuntu started in 2004. Hang on a second. Let me adjust my headset mic here. All right. Yeah, 2004. So if you do the math, it's going on almost 20 years. 20 years for a Linux-based system such as Ubuntu. And in spite of all the changes, all the controversies, all the hatred, the semi-hatred, and so on, it's still alive. Ubuntu is like it's like a Toyota. It keeps going. Or the what's that one commercial? Or the Energizer Bunny. It just keeps going and going and going, no matter what. As well it should. Why not? It still works. Normally I would do these streams with Linux Mint, Ubuntu Mate, Zorin. But for this morning, I am using standard Ubuntu. For any Linux-based system to last that long, they must be doing something right, even if it's not your favorite. It's not my current favorite. It's not because that it doesn't work. It's the desktop they have chosen, the GNOME desktop, and we've talked about this before. It's the GNOME desktop, the standard GNOME desktop. It's just not as user-friendly as what it should be, as opposed to, say, the Mate desktop, which is currently my current favorite desktop for Windows users if you wanted to try something based off of Linux, because it's simple and it just works. Now, the one thing about Ubuntu, it works. The LTS versions are terrific. It is stable. I think Ubuntu looks great on a big 50-inch 4K TV screen like what I have now. I'm not streaming in 4K. This computer would never handle it. This 13-year-old Gateway, or Gateway from 2013 rather. But Ubuntu looks great on a big screen. It still looks good. It's just not as user-friendly. We'll talk about that at a future Good Morning Linux or a live show or something like that. Canonical, the company behind Ubuntu, started out in 2004, and the goal was to make an operating system, a Linux-based operating system for the masses, friendly for the masses, versus something that you have to use terminal commands to install. If you had to solve something, install software to install the system, it just really wasn't designed for the masses. And for the most part, Canonical succeeded over the years. My first date with Linux was with Ubuntu back in 2006. And if it wasn't for Ubuntu, I probably wouldn't be here. If I had to be completely honest, wouldn't be here. And I'm probably not the only one. Now, since then, I've tested other Linux-based systems. Ubuntu Mate, Linux Mint, a little bit of Arch, a little bit, what's that one? PC Linux OS. I think that uses RPM packages, BSD one time. I've stuck with Ubuntu based because those appear to be the most user-friendly for beginners. Very large community, lots of software to choose from, and Ubuntu still is a famous name when it comes to Linux. And I wish it wasn't this cold this morning. It's like 12 degrees here in Ohio, and it's awful for this time of year. So I'm drinking water to stay hydrated. I hate dry air and static electricity. That's how I destroyed one of my TVs once, a long time ago. But that's a different story. So for Ubuntu, in spite of the challenges and the changes and the controversies, some valid, some not, it's still around, it still works, people still use it. I do, not as much. Like I said, it's been, this is the 18th year for Ubuntu. So for 18 years, they must be doing something right. I don't know if it's still the go-to Linux operating system of choice for millions of users. I don't have the exact stats, but as far as Ubuntu based, yeah, I think there are millions of users out there who still enjoy using Ubuntu or Ubuntu based. As I stated, I still prefer my Linux Mints, my Zorns, Ubuntu Mate. Those are my three go-to Linux that I use. And those are the three that I will recommend for beginners. Up to 2016, I would have definitely recommended Ubuntu for beginners. The Unity desktop really matured nicely back in 2016. Just a solid operating system with the Unity desktop, and I was looking forward for what the future held for Ubuntu. Then they switched to GNOME, and I was like, ugh. I felt like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yes, you can make it work with some tweaks and extensions, but out of the box, standard GNOME is absolutely atrocious. Again, we'll talk about that in a future show, but now there are some systems that have modified the GNOME desktop. I mentioned Zorin, probably the best modification of the GNOME desktop. Pop! OS is up there, although there are rumors they may be modifying their choice of operating system and make their own desktop environment. If the rumors hold true, I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. We'll have to wait and see. But, yeah. I still use Ubuntu, not as much, more so Ubuntu based. And honestly, as far as the Ubuntu desktop itself, standard Ubuntu desktop, I don't know what the future holds. The GNOME desktop environment is something, well, either you like it or you don't like it. I don't. In its standard form, it doesn't make sense. Now, with tweaks, extensions, modifications, or whatever you want to call it, yeah, it's usable. It's definitely usable, but yeah, I don't understand it. I really don't understand the GNOME desktop environment in its standard vanilla form. I just don't understand it. Another sip of water. All right, so before I forget, most of you who will probably catch this podcast on repeat, this was unscheduled. I didn't feel like going out to play in 12-degree weather. Ooh, now it's 15 degrees. Ooh, heat wave. So I thought I would jump on for a few minutes just to say hello. Thank you for those of you who joined in Friday night for the fundraiser for Ukraine. We raised a few dollars. Thank you. Thank you for those of you who support this community of ours through the Super Chats, through Patreon, through PayPal. It does help during these difficult times. Still, life is still not back to normal for many of us. I know it's still not for me, but I'm still here. Or as Arnold would say, I'm still here. Yeah. But I need more power. Anyway, thank you for sticking around. So for those of you who listen to this on the replay, post your comments below if you still use Ubuntu or Ubuntu based. Why or why not? I still do. And I will still recommend anything that is stable, that you don't have to, worry about bugs or breakages. So I will still recommend Ubuntu if you want to try it. It's just not on my top 5 list for beginners. Maybe I'll keep it on my top 10 list because it works. But it needs to be more user-friendly. And I suppose that's why we have your Zorin OSs, your Linux Mints, your Pop OSs, that make Ubuntu-based systems more friendlier. And it's really them that keeps the beginner base thriving, in the somewhat complicated world of Linux. Now, Linux beginner-based systems aren't hard. I think the whole world of Linux can be a bit hard and overwhelming for beginners. Understandable. Last I checked, there are about 600 different versions of a Linux-based system. That can be overwhelming for a beginner, and out of those 600, give or take, maybe 10 are really rock solid for beginners, maybe even less than that. And really most of those are Ubuntu-based, and it's that way for a reason. Ubuntu-based meaning Linux Mint, Zorin, Pop OS. They just work. Are they perfect? Nah, no, but nothing is. And it's a joy. It's still nice to install a lighter weight system on an older computer like this. This one I installed an old HDD drive from a broken Toshiba laptop. No SSD here. It would run obviously much faster if it had an SSD, but it's fast enough even with Ubuntu, which is not considered a fast, lightweight system. I still get a kick out of reading blogs. Hey, if you're looking for a lightweight Linux system, try Ubuntu. And I'm like, say what? Yeah, if you want a lightweight Ubuntu-based system, don't use Ubuntu. Use Ubuntu-based, such as Zorin OS Lite, Linux Mint, and so on. The choices are there. So the question is, do you still use Ubuntu? Maybe a better question should be, do you still use Ubuntu-based? And I know many of you do, because you tell me that you still do. And of course, I still do. And I switch back and forth between Windows 10, 11, Ubuntu-based, Chromebook. For the Chromebooks, I wish we had a little bit more content creation software. For Chromebooks, the machines are certainly capable, but Kdenlive doesn't work. OBS Studio doesn't work. The software still hasn't caught up yet. Chromebooks have been around now approximately 11 years. They are fantastic Linux-based systems that have made Linux a lot easier for the masses, hence the popularity explosion of Chromebook sales. I guess last year, they surpassed the Mac sales in growth. That says a lot for the world of Linux. All right, I think I will end this here. If I missed you, I apologize. I might catch you, let's see, maybe on a Windows Wednesday. We will talk, of course, about Windows 11 and so on. For those of you who listen to this later, enjoy it. If you have any questions or comments, post them in the comments below. I am going to start my day with some breakfast. It is currently 10:15 as we move the clocks here an hour ahead here in the United States, and I still never quite understood all of that since the beginning. Maybe some of you can explain that to me. But yeah, we lost an hour's sleep, but that's okay. All right, that's all I have for this one, guys. Again, I'll catch you on the next one, maybe Wednesday. Be safe, stay warm, enjoy your Ubuntu or whatever you use, and I will catch you on the next one. Arrivederci.